Namaste everyone, Michelle Granberg here. Welcome to another episode of Positive Energy, promoting a world of empathy and compassion for every human and animal. On this show, I'm joined by staff and animal friends from Cedar Run Wildlife Refuge, a nonprofit dedicated to the preservation of New Jersey wildlife and habitats through education, conservation, and rehabilitation. Stay where you are, because Positive Energy starts right now. All right, Positive Energy welcoming back Tracy Bloodworth, Director of Development and Communications at Cedar Run Wildlife Refuge, and Rachel Detto, Assistant Director of Education. Great, that's a great title.
Thank you.
From Cedar Run Wildlife Refuge as well. And you've brought with you a lovely little guest that I hope everyone can see very closely how gorgeous he is. And I've been told that this is a Remy, who is a black rat snake. So, Rachel, tell us about Remy and what makes him so amazingly special.
So Remy is one of our newer residents at Cedar Run. We're very, very excited to have him. Remy is a rat snake. He is a black rat snake. He is a juvenile black rat snake, so he's still a young one. He's only about 2 years old. And right now he is about 3 feet long, surprisingly. And you wouldn't know it by looking at him now because he's kind of all curled up around my arm. But he is, the species of black rat snake is actually the largest species of snake in New Jersey. They can get to be about 7 feet long, which is surprising. So this little guy's got a lot of growing to do.
Yeah. Well, right now he's like making a nice bracelet of himself. Tracy, do you know Remy's story? Is it typical how Remy came to you and why he's not being released, right?
Yeah. So Remy is one of our residents that are, with all of our residents at Cedar Run, they're non-releasable residents. So we do have our wildlife hospital that we focus on rehabbing to release them back into the wild. But the residents that you would see either on our education programs, festivals, or at the refuge that you can actually visit, they're not releasable. So Remy is one of about over 55 animals that we do have. And I believe he was
raised in captivity.
He was raised in captivity, yeah.
Yeah, so he was raised in captivity. The people that had him couldn't care for him anymore, so he was surrendered to us. Now,
and that's what we want people to do. Or rather than just release them into the wild.
Remy wouldn't be able to survive.
Not survive.
Yeah, Remy wouldn't be able to survive out in the wild because he's been handled by people for so long that he's used to that. He has no fear of anything that could be dangerous out in the wild anymore. So he doesn't have any of that fear. He's not going to run away from a dog. He's not going to try and get away from a person who might be trying to pick him up. He's also not going to know what to do in the wintertime. So when it starts to get colder, he's never had to hibernate. So
is he warm-blooded though? Would he have survived in winter had he not been domesticated?
No, he would not survive because he is a cold-blooded animal. That's why he's kind of wrapping around my arm so much.
Yeah, right, for warmth, seeking warmth.
Yep. So I am very warm right now, and he's like, hey, I like that. I would like to wrap around that, please. He also kind of thinks that I am a tree branch, so he's just sort of wrapping around me like he would a tree.
So are they indigenous, this type of snake? And I know you're going to tell us why the name black rat snake is why is that?
So they are indigenous. Like I said, they are the largest kind of snake in New Jersey, the longest kind of snake in New Jersey, definitely. And he is a member of the rat snakes. So rat snakes are a kind of snake in the U.S. that include things like corn snakes, milk snakes, and then northern black rat snakes. When they're young, and most of them have this really cool pattern on them, so that pattern helps them hide in the leaves, especially when they're young. Some of the rat snakes, like the milk snakes and the corn snakes, they keep that pattern their whole lives. Black rat snakes are a little bit different because they will lose that pattern as they grow and just go almost completely black. They're a really strikingly colored snake. It's all black with a white belly that goes all the way down. So
Nice.
the contrast is really sharp. I love it. So they are called rat snakes though because that's one of the things that they eat. You know, they
Hard to imagine that a snake that small, when they get bigger, they eat, but they look for rats. But do they have that kind of mouth that can just sort of
oh yeah.
unhinge? Unhinge, not really, literally unhinge, but
Oh yeah, so rat snakes and actually snakes in general are known for their ability to just swallow their food whole, and that is something that they can do. So rat snakes are one of the kinds. They'll just open their mouth, their jaw hinges down, and then the split here where our chin is fused, it actually separates a little bit. So they can actually swallow things up to 3 times the size of their head. Now in a big 7-foot rat snake, rats are no problem.
yeah.
But for this little guy, because he's still a baby, he's still young, he can't handle that. So when these snakes are little and when they hatch out of the egg, they're only about the size of a pencil. When they hatch out, they can't eat all that big stuff. So they have to eat things like bugs. And we had talked about in the last episode, we talked about insects being vital to our ecosystems. And part of that is because they're food for a lot of other animals.
They're dependent on their for survival.
Exactly. So these little guys, if they don't have those small crickets and grasshoppers and cicadas and locusts and anything else like that, they're not going to survive because they can't eat the same things that they would as an adult. So.
Why are people so afraid of snakes, do you think? Is it just because people don't know if they're poisonous or not poisonous? Do people really get bit by snakes very often? And what should someone do? I'm throwing a whole bunch of questions at you, but I don't want to forget them.
Yeah.
What should someone do when they see a snake in the wild?
So I'll go for the last question first.
Yeah.
What should you do if you see it in the wild? Give it space. Okay? People get bit because they try and handle snakes. They try and pick them up or they try and move them from place to place, and that is the last thing that the snake wants you to do. This guy is very, very calm and docile because he's been handled his whole life, but a wild snake isn't going to do that. So definitely leave it alone, give it space, let it go about its business. Most snakes are not going to hurt you at all. There are only 2 venomous snakes, I think, in New Jersey. I think there's only
There
2.
you
I
go.
think it's a
Only
rattle.
2.
Yeah, I think it's a
Out of
rattlesnake.
how many? But, yeah.
And
Rattlesnakes are in New Jersey?
rattlesnakes are in New Jersey, mostly in northern New Jersey, but they are around, mostly in like the mountains and the forested, like deep forested areas. And a lot of times they just want to go about their business too. You know, they'll hear us and see us coming and say, nah, no, I don't want to deal with you.
I'll pass. I'll pass.
Yeah, so they're not going to hurt you. As for why snakes are feared, I don't think it's a venomous thing necessarily. They do move very quickly. They move very fast, and I think they move in a way that startles us.
I was going to say it's more of a startle
Yeah.
reflex for people.
Yeah, they move in a way that we just aren't used to and aren't comfortable with, and that's something that can really scare people and creep people out. But honestly, I think it's fascinating how
They're
they can
so
move.
well camouflaged in the brush. Tracy, you have other snakes over at Cedar Run. You have a bunch, I think.
Oh my gosh, we do. So we have a northern pine snake, we have corn snakes, and we have one non-native resident who is a ball python, and she actually was Mozart. She was found under a piano in a newly renovated apartment in the 90s as a pet surrender, kind of like left behind in that apartment. So that's why she is Mozart. But she's the only non-native species. But yes, we do have snakes, we have got turtles, we have owls, we have all sorts of different things that you can learn about. But with the camouflage, just jumping off of that, one of the things that will help protect not only insects, but also snakes is for upcoming fall cleanup. It's best just to leave the leaves, right? Leave those leaves, have that rest for the winter time.
You're obsessed with cleaning up leaves.
Right? Truly.
What is going on?
Yep.
Like
leaves,
OCD level, cleaning up every leaf.
Truly. So leave the leaves, especially for the fall into winter. We want to protect, the snakes and the chipmunks and all of those bugs and insects that make these animals thrive. And then we can clean that up in the springtime.
Look at how calm he's being.
Look, if you saw this little guy in the wild, I would be fascinated. I would
this is
stop
just what
and
they
look
do.
and but give him space as
Yeah.
well.
And just
So-
like with any animals and that you see in the wild, just leave them be.
Yeah.
It's better to look and not touch. Don't try to pick them
Don't
up.
panic. Don't panic. That's where they live. It's their world too. We're just sharing it. We're trying to share it. So anything else that is your favorite sort of thing about snakes, Rachel, or that you want to, like little known maybe FAQ about
So
snakes on the
One thing that I learned recently, we're talking about how they move, right? So
Yeah.
snakes actually, obviously they don't have legs or arms, right?
Yeah.
They are, very muscular. They're very strong for what they look like. Most people think that they're gonna be like squishy or something like that, but they're actually very strong. So they have a lot of musculature to help them move, and they'll push off side to side. But then scientists have found that their belly scales are actually almost totally frictionless. So they can just glide
Wow.
right along the ground. And
No
it
wonder they
makes-
move so fast.
Exactly, yes.
They're gliding and they're like one big muscle.
Yes, yes. They are super strong. They're so cool. I love them.
One of my favorite things is that they, when they shed, they actually do the eye caps too. So they shed like
caps are
inside
the-
out.
They don't have eyelids. So they just have scales over top of their eyes.
Okay, you heard it here, folks. Snakes do not have eyelids.
No, you cannot win a staring contest with a
You
snake.
cannot win a staring contest. We will blink first.
Yep.
Oh my God. Okay, so Remy, you're super cool, and you guys are super cool. But we're going to stop because we're going to bring on another wonderful guest,
A feathered friend.
a feathered friend. And we had a scaly friend, now a feathered friend. Okay, now on Positive Energy, this is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous Clementine, who I'm just fawning all over because she is gorgeous. Red phase, Eastern red phase screech owl, I'm told. So tell us a little bit about Clementine's story and what about these screech owls? Because there's so much to know.
Yeah, so Clementine came into our wildlife hospital at the end of 2021, I believe. She had an impact injury, so there was something, she hit something or something hit her. And unfortunately that caused some damage to her head and her brain, we think, or possibly her eyes. We're not quite sure exactly, but through rehabilitating her, we found out that she actually can't see her food well enough to capture it. So she was not able to be released back into the wild because she wouldn't have been able to get her own food. We think that she was born earlier in 2021, so she's only about 2 years old now, maybe 2.5 at this point. So she's not that old, but she is fully grown. So this is as big as she's ever going to get.
She really looks like a baby, but she's not.
No,
She's just youthful looking.
Yes, yes. They'll get to be full size. So screech owls actually grow very, very quickly, and most birds do. She'll get to be full size after about 2 months after hatching out of the egg. But she won't get to be, fully flighted and able to be on her own for another few months after that. So
I think she's blinking in code to me right now.
yeah.
Are there a lot of screech owls in New Jersey, or are they in danger at all?
No,
or
screech
going down
owls-
in numbers?
No, screech owls are pretty common. They're relatively common. The cool thing about screech owls, and I tell people, is that if you have woodpeckers in your area, you probably have screech owls as well. Because they like the same kind of habitat, and screech owls like to nest in the old woodpecker nesting holes. So they don't make their own nests, they steal other birds.
They can't make their own nests?
They can, but they won't. They prefer to
They
just,
just prefer to
move
rent
in.
rather
Yep.
than build from scratch?
They're opportunistic.
They are. They'll prefer to
hello.
move in.
Yeah.
And it works for them because they actually like to start breeding in like February and March. So they get started really early before the other birds get back from migration, and the other birds come back and they're like, wait, what? My home. So, meh.
So what do they eat in the wild then?
It varies. For the most part, these guys are the second smallest owl that we have in New Jersey, so their food is pretty tiny as well. A lot of mice, a lot of little rodents like moles and voles and things like that. But in the summertime, that changes to a lot of bugs. they actually eat a lot of insects and invertebrates over the summer. So things like cicadas, moths, centipedes, millipedes, big things on the ground. Grasshoppers and crickets, they'll eat all of those as well.
So do you feed her live insects or frozen?
Everything we feed our animals has to be dead. If they were able to hunt live food,
I see.
we would be able to put them back in the wild, and they'd be fine. Yep. So that's our goal for most of our animals that come into our wildlife hospitals.
Of
We'd
course.
like them to be able to
Of course.
be
That's
able
their
to work
goal
on their
too.
own. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So fascinating. So is she blinking like one eye at a time? Do they have 3 eyelids? So I remember that correctly. And then what's the whole myth about they can't turn their heads 360 degrees? No, 180 almost?
She's getting as close as she can right
She's
now.
demonstrating it right now. See what I can do?
So what they do is,
Like looking behind me like,
Checking things out.
so even if she can't see all that well, her hearing is amazing. So she's hearing all sorts of things that are happening around her. But you're right, she does have 3 eyelids, and she cannot turn her head all the way around. She can do about 270 degrees, which we can do about 180 from shoulder to shoulder. She can do shoulder to shoulder and then look straight backwards without turning her back. That would hurt us. But for her, she has no problem with that. But the reason she has to be able to do that relates back to her eyes. You know, she is a nocturnal hunter. She sees at night, and her eyes are enormous for the size of her head. And her eyes are actually so big that they cannot move around. So just like you can roll your eyes at your kids, your grandkids, or whatever, she doesn't do that. She cannot at all. So she just kind of, or if you're a kid, roll your eyes at your parents. That'll work too.
oh my gosh.
She can't do that at all. She does have the 3 eyelids though, and she is going to blink one at a time because she is a small bird. She sees us as a threat, and she's going to do that exactly to keep one eye.
Trying to scare you right there.
She's going to do it to keep one eye on
Keeping
you.
her eyes.
Yep. And
How can people now preserve their habitats and the owls themselves? Because we would certainly never want to be without these beauties.
So these guys are really pretty adaptable, but the thing that affects them and birds in general is pesticide use, unfortunately. So things where poisons and pesticides get into the insects and then they eat them, that affects their system really, really strongly. So anything that could be perceived as a toxin in the system, in the waterways, in the food that they eat, it's really, really detrimental to their health and then to their ecosystem's health as a whole overall.
So would you have people forego chemicals altogether, or is there a better alternative to chemicals?
Ideally, there's certain ways to go about it. There's best practices such as not starting with chemicals right off the bat if possible. Doing something like, if you've only got 3 things that you're trying to get rid of, maybe do the cupping method or maybe a squish method or something like that. We call that mechanical detriment or mechanical, I forget what the term is, but something like that, before heading to chemicals.
Okay.
And then if you did have to use chemical, maybe do it on a day when it's not going to rain.
Yeah.
You know, maybe.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just wash away immediately and wash into the system.
Keep the animals in mind, folks. Tracy, talk about, because I know it's illegal. Sometimes people say, okay, I'm going to bring an animal out of the wild in as a pet, and not only is it illegal, but it is potentially deadly for them.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that in terms of, that's why Cedar Run exists.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always best to, observe wildlife in the wild. We love to go out for hikes, walks, enjoy from your window and backyard all of the wildlife, but they remain outside, right? It seems like it would be really fun to have an owl, a fox, a skunk, a chipmunk, or any of that stuff, because they look cute, and we have that relationship with the domestic animals. But ultimately, that's really not great for the wildlife, right? Because they are wild. They're not domesticated like our cats and dogs. As well as it really plays into this whole ecosystem, right? So if we take and remove, let's say, a squirrel out of the ecosystem, I know it seems like, oh man, it's only one squirrel and we have so many squirrels. But that squirrel might be going and burying a nut somewhere or an acorn, and they totally forget where they put that, and then it grows to be a little sapling, and now a deer comes and eats a little sapling, and then that goes, and the cycle begins and affects way more than just that one piece of animal.
So that's like the definition of an ecosystem, right? The interdependence between all living.
Exactly. So once you take that out, once you remove those insects from that habitat, from the pesticides, from that cleanup, you remove that snake, you remove all of that, you know, all those little pieces that really kind of affect that big ecosystem. It really affects, you know, more than just your yard, more than, oh man, I don't really want those, you know, those things in my yard or whatnot. So there's definitely different methods on how to do that. And yes, it is illegal in New Jersey to own any type of wildlife that if you are not a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Right. So the protection of that animal is super duper important, especially, you know, as you enjoy those animals out in the wild. But two is that they also have many diseases that you might not see that would affect you, your pets, and your loved ones. And while social media is great for educating the public and being able to kind of share different things that you're doing, make sure you do your research. Make sure you're following those respectable sources, as well as, you know, it seems like it's a good idea to have that fox, you know, be in your house, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so
for your own and for the animals, protection
exactly.
and safety, please.
So
please,
do your
please.
research, make sure that, you know, we're doing everything the best to protect these animals and
know what a wild animal is versus a domestic animal. But so that leads us kind of in, Tracy, to talk a little bit more about Cedar Run for a minute. The services that are provided there, what will people find?
Yeah. So
when they go there?
When somebody would come to visit for the day, we have a nature center. We have a reptile room where you would see Remy, as well as our other snakes and turtles. We have a resource room. We have a little play area indoors and outdoors for the kiddos. It's awesome. And it's a nice like stopping break for the parents. But nature play, we definitely encourage that. We have about 3.5 miles of hiking trails. And we have outdoor housing area. It's a wildlife housing area that's right over a bridge. And we have a bald eagle, we have owls, we have hawks, we have a white-tailed deer, you know, all sorts of different New Jersey native wildlife that you can read about their stories on why they're not able to be released. And that way, you know, it's stewarding the next as well as the current, you know, minds and individuals that would be able to help and learn about our native wildlife and habitats on how to protect them. So
I hope that we're sparking inspiration maybe in some kids or some adults who now say, you know what, I want to get involved, I want to help wildlife, I want to be a rehabber, you know, that would be absolutely wonderful. So Clementine is like, yay, I totally agree. So Rachel, what I guess in sort of closing, what little known fact or most interesting fact could you say about screech owls?
Little known fact about screech owls.
Or misconception.
Well, then I can go with my favorite misconception that I hear all the time. Are owls wise?
Why do we think that?
You know, I think we think that because they are very intense. And when
they look like they're thinking.
Yeah, when they're looking at you, you know that you're the focus of their attention. And for us, that's a great thing. You know, we enjoy eye contact and we like that. For them, they just want to make sure that you're not hurting them. So they're
on hyper alert.
Yeah, they are on hyper alert. They're fantastic in their environment, but you take them out of their environment and they're not going to cope well. So we want to make sure that we have their habitat well preserved for them.
I love that interpretation because I thought maybe it was some other reasons, you know, some fictional story about a wise old owl, and that just got passed along. But I like your interpretation because.
Yeah, there might be, but you know, there's always been stories of wise old owls. So, you know,
Yes, absolutely. But we're sure, Clementine, that you are wise. And those are feathers. Those are not ears. We want to.
Yes.
The ears you cannot see.
No, her ears are covered in feathers. They're kind of off to the side of her head. Those little things up there, they're just ear tufts. They're called plumicorns. And they use them for, scientists think, that's something that if your viewers are really interested, they can research in the future. Scientists think that they're there for communication. If they have them up, they're either interested or they're trying to hide.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I love it so much. Thank you, Clementine, for being on Positive Energy. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Tracy.
We would love to see you come out to Cedar Run so that you can learn a little bit more.
I'm going to bring a camera and just come to Cedar Run.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, please.
On the road.
Thank you, you guys. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
We're wrapping up another enlightening show. Can you imagine a world without wildlife? Let's do our best to protect, defend, rescue, and be an ally for all precious native wildlife species. Thank you for watching. Check out michellegranberg.com, go vegan, and join me next time on Positive Energy.